Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're digging into Arrowhead Pharmaceuticals, specifically that May 12th, 2025 earnings call that had quite a bit of anticipation around it.
Absolutely. It felt like a key moment for investors and anyone watching the RNAi space, really, to kind of gauge where Arrowhead is heading.
Right. So this call and the documents released alongside it, they give us a chance to see how the expectations built up from, earlier updates and previews actually matched up with what was said.
Exactly. It's about comparing the story they'd been telling with the facts on the ground presented during the call and in the filings.
So our mission here for you today is to really unpack that earnings call. We want to pull out the key takeaways, maybe flag any surprises, and see if the overall narrative shifted, especially around those big programs.
Yeah, and we'll be looking closely at things like ARO-RAGE, ANG3, the Zodasiran, and of course the path forward for Plozasiran commercialization.
Okay, and to do that, we've got the earnings call transcript. There was that preview document from May 5th setting expectations, and of course the official Form 10Q for the quarter ending March 31st.
Got a good set of materials to work with.
Definitely. Okay, let's start with Plozasiran, ARO-APOC3. This is targeting FCS, that familial chylomicronemia syndrome, and also SHTG, severe hypertriglyceridemia. Big focus going in was the path to commercialization, right? Launch potentially late this year.
That was the headline expectation, yeah. Commercial readiness, market access, manufacturing updates. What we actually heard, well, it reinforced that confidence. They sound pretty committed to a potential first commercial launch for FCS, possibly as early as late 2025.
Okay, so confidence is still high. What about the specifics, the regulatory stuff?
It gave some solid updates there. The NDA, the new drug application, was accepted by the FDA. That's key. And they got a PDUFA date, the decision date, November 18th, 2025. Interestingly, no plans for an advisory committee meeting right now.
No AdCom. That can sometimes be seen as positive.
It can be, yeah. And in Europe, the MAA, the marketing authorization application, that's been submitted and validated. Plus, they're working on filings for the UK, Canada, and Japan, too. So, broad regulatory movement.
That sounds like good progress across the board. And what about expanding into SHTG, the larger severe hypertriglyceridemia group?
Right, that was another point of interest. They confirmed they've kicked off the phase 3 program for SHTG. This came after getting feedback from the FDA and EMA. The design is meant to meet international standards, the ICH guidelines.
And the timeline for that?
They're expecting to complete that phase 3 program around summer 2026, with an FDA filing plan pretty quickly after that.
Okay, so that's moving along too. There was also some buzz around data presented at the EAS, the European Atherosclerosis Society meeting.
Yes, they highlighted an abstract there. The key message was Plozasiran's potential to not just lower triglycerides, which we knew, but also, importantly, to cut the risk of pancreatitis in FCS patients and improve their quality of life.
That pancreatitis link is huge for those patients, isn't it?
It really is. It's a constant dangerous threat. So reducing that risk, maybe fewer hospital visits, better daily life. That really resonates. They mentioned market research suggesting this point, combined with the deep triglyceride lowering, is hitting home with stakeholders.
Makes sense. Did they quantify the triglyceride reduction again? What were the latest numbers?
Yeah, they did. In the phase 3 Palisade study for FCS, they saw about an 80% reduction from baseline by the first month. And maybe more concretely, 75% of patients got below 880 milli-GDL and half got below 500 milli-GDL. Remember, these patients started at an average of like 2,500 milli-GDL.
Wow, okay. That's a massive drop from a very high baseline.
Exactly. And for the SHTG phase 2, where the average baseline was more like 850, 900 milli-GDL, they saw a 53% reduction compared to placebo. So the expectation for the SHTG phase 3 is definitely for some impressive numbers there too.
Understandable why they're seeing interest from payers then, especially with the pancreatitis angle.
Right. They touched on commercial preparations too. In the US, they're using analytics to find potential patients, doing disease education. In Europe, they've got field medical teams engaging. So the takeaway for Plozasiran is definitely strong progress, high hopes for launch, and potential beyond just FCS.
Okay, good summary. Let's shift gears to Zodasiran, or ARO-ANG3. This one targets HoFH, homozygous FH, another potentially major cardiovascular drug. What was the expectation versus reality here?
The expectation was clarity on the strategy, how they see this potentially billion-dollar asset moving forward, and progress on getting that phase 3 started. And they delivered on the confidence part. They reiterated their belief in Zodasiran as a potent LDL-lowering drug for HoFH, highlighting the quarterly subcutaneous dosing based on phase 1 and 2 data.
Did they talk specifics on phase 3?
Yes, they said the phase 3 study is designed size-wise, similar to the Palisade trial for Plozasiran, comparing 200 milligrams quarterly against placebo. And crucially, they expect to start enrolling patients this year.
This year. Okay, that's a concrete step. What about timelines for launch?
If things go well, they floated a potential market launch as early as 2028 or maybe 2029. Still ways off, but having a target window is helpful.
And the commercial side for Zodasiran? Any overlap with Plozasiran?
That was an interesting point they made. They see synergy there. Because the doctors treating FCS and SHTG often overlap with those managing HoFH patients, they think they can leverage the Plozasiran commercial setup pretty efficiently. Less cost, faster ramp-up, potentially.
Smart. So the key takeaway for Zodasiran is continued strong belief, and that phase 3 starting soon is the main news.
Exactly. Phase 3 is the next big hurdle.
All right. Now, ARO-RAGE, this is their pulmonary program. The preview suggested updates here were important for the whole lung platform. What did we hear?
Well, this is where things get a bit quiet. Looking through the transcript excerpts in the 10Q, there really weren't any specific updates given on ARO-RAGE itself. It's listed in the pipeline table, but no discussion points highlighted.
Huh. So silence on that front. What do we make of that?
It's hard to say for sure. Could be there just wasn't anything major to report this quarter. Or it could be a strategic choice, you know? Maybe they wanted to focus squarely on Plozasiran's upcoming launch and the Zodasiran phase 3 start.
So maybe just prioritizing nearer-term news?
Potentially. It just means we'll have to keep an eye out for AR-RAGE updates in future quarters. It leaves a bit of an open question for now.
Fair point. Okay, let's move to the earlier stage stuff, the obesity and metabolic programs. ARO-INHBE and ARO-ALK7. Lots of interest in this space generally. What news came out?
Some positive movement here. ARO-INHBE, that study actually started dosing back in December 2024. They expect initial data by the end of this year, 2025.
Okay, so data relatively soon for INHBE and ALK7.
ARO-ALK7 is expected to start dosing shortly, they said. Initial data would follow probably soon after the INHBE results come in.
And the thinking behind these targets. Why INHBE and ALK7?
It's based on human genetics. Studies link loss of function in these genes to good things. Better body composition, favorable metabolic markers, seemingly without safety issues. So the hope is these could fill gaps left by current treatments, like the GLP-1s.
How so? What kind of gap?
Well, the idea is maybe they could create a long-acting agent, maybe quarterly dosing like some of their others that's well tolerated, but specifically helps preserve muscle mass while targeting visceral fat. Perhaps even without needing super strict diets. That's the aspirational goal anyway.
Interesting angle. Did they mention differences between the two programs, risk profiles?
They did. They noted the ARO-ALK7 platform is sort of new to human testing, so it carries maybe slightly more perceived risk than the INHBE platform, which builds on tech they've used before. The strategy for now seems to be get both through phase 1, look at the initial data, and then likely pick one to really advance. They also kept the door open for potential partnerships down the line for either or both.
Got it. So early days, but excitement building for data later this year.
Definitely one to watch.
Okay, let's talk partnerships. The big one with Takeda for Plozasiran or ARO-AT for that liver disease, ATLD, always crucial to track. What's the latest there?
Takeda has been guiding publicly that the phase 3 studies, there are two, could finish enrollment sometime this year. Remember, these are 2-year studies to get to the primary endpoint. So hitting full enrollment would be a key step.
And the economics for Arrowhead remain attractive.
Very much so. It's a 50-50 profit split in the U.S., 20-25% royalties outside the U.S., and still up to $527 million in potential milestones remaining. They already got the $300 million upfront and a $40 million milestone when phase 3 started. Seems like that collaboration is progressing well.
That sounds positive. What about other partnerships and pipeline updates? They have quite a few irons in the fire.
They do. They briefly mentioned partnered programs like Olpasiran with Amgen and Alpasiran, which is opioid-related, suggesting they could see approvals around the same time frame as Plozasiran and Fazirsiran based on partner communications. Also, GFK dosed a 5th patient in a phase 2 trial for an ASH candidate, GSK 4532990, and that triggered a small $2.5 million milestone payment for Arrowhead.
Right.
And of course, the huge Sarepta deal officially closed. That brought in the $325 million equity investment and the $500 million upfront payment, plus potential for much more down the road.
That Sarepta deal really changed the financial picture, didn't it? We should probably talk about that next.
Definitely. Before we jump to financials, though, they also gave quick updates on their own ARO-C3 and ARO-CFB programs in complement diseases, showing encouraging data, reducing pathway activity, and proteinuria.
Okay. And anything on the CNS side?
Yes, they highlighted the CNS pipeline moving forward. MAPT for Alzheimer's and HTT for Huntington's, which is licensed to Sarepta, both expected to hit the clinic by year-end, and also Moguline for Parkinson's early next year. They signaled more CNS targets are coming too, some partnered, some internal.
Yeah, okay. That's a broad pipeline. Now let's get to those financials. Cash runway is always top of mind. What was the situation reported?
This was a major positive, I think. They sounded very confident. Quote was something like, "Feel very good about not having to raise equity capital at this time."
That's a strong statement. Did they give a time frame?
Yeah, they said they're funded into June 2028. That gets them through a lot of key milestones for Plozasiran, Zodasiran, and others. The Sarepta deal obviously played a huge role here.
What were the actual cash numbers?
As of March 31st, 2025, they reported $185.7 million in cash, equivalents, and restricted cash. But the big number was $911.7 million in available-for-sale securities. Their total cash and investments actually increased over the prior 6 months, largely thanks to Sarepta.
So runway is secured well into the future. That definitely removes an overhang.
Absolutely. They stated they expect enough liquidity for at least the next 12 months, but the overall picture looks much longer than that.
And how does this financial strength impact their commercial plans, especially for Plozasiran launching soon?
It gives them flexibility. Their plan is to build their own commercial team in the U.S. and key European markets for Plozasiran using that rare disease centers of excellence model. But they also said they're open to partners for the rest of the world.
And for Zodasiran?
As we mentioned, they see that as a relatively straightforward add-on to the Plozasiran infrastructure because of the physician overlap. So the strong cash position supports building that initial commercial footprint themselves.
Okay. One other piece of news around the call was the CFO transition. Can you quickly cover that?
Sure. Ken Myskowski is retiring as CFO, effective March 13th. But he's staying on as an assistant to the CFO until end of January 2026 to help with the transition.
Yeah.
Daniel Apel is the incoming CFO. Seems like a planned, smooth handover. Mr. Myskowski was on the call and signed the 10-Q.
Good to have that continuity. Okay, let's try to synthesize all this. As we wrap up our deep dive, what were the main, maybe surprising points where reality differed from expectations, or just key highlights?
I think the sheer strength of the financial position post-Sarepta was perhaps even better than many anticipated. That June 2028 runway is significant. Also, the level of detail on the Plozasiran commercial launch plan provided some welcome clarity. And just the breadth of progress across so many programs simultaneously is quite striking.
So, summing up the progress on the key drugs, Plozasiran on track, Zodasiran heading to phase 3, obesity candidates showing early promise, partnerships moving forward. How do you think investors are likely feeling after this update?
I'd imagine the sentiment is likely positive, or at least solidified. The path to potential commercial revenue with Plozasiran seems clearer. The next big cardiovascular asset, Zodasiran, is advancing. The pipeline has multiple shots on goal, and the funding concerns are largely off the table for the foreseeable future.
Were there any lingering questions, though? Areas where maybe more information would have been helpful?
The main one, as we discussed, is probably ARO-RAGE. The lack of an update there stands out a bit, given its importance to the pulmonary platform, so that's something people will likely be looking for next time.
Right. So, as a final thought for our listeners to mull over, what should they be thinking about regarding Arrowhead's trajectory now?
Maybe consider this transition. Arrowhead is shifting from being mostly an R&D engine to potentially a commercial stage company very soon. How did that change the company? How might their success, if Plozasiran and others launch well, impact the broader RNAi field in patient care? And, given their broad platform, what other surprises, maybe new targets or deals could emerge as this pipeline matures? It's definitely a dynamic story to keep following.